There are secret evils buried in the tradition of this church, sins the world was never meant to know. Brethren, the evil I have seen in this church cannot continue. Not like this. Not under my watch as the Pope. I swear it. This church must change, or it will fall. These were shocking, emotional words of Pope Leo XIV before changing the aged-long tradition of the church. With these changes, the church will never remain the same. Watch this video to the end.
Okay, imagine this. You're in the Sala Clementina. It's dimly lit, the air's just thick with anticipation, and then this voice just cuts through it all. Pope Leo XIV, he says, the church will no longer be a museum of dead traditions.
Wow.
Yeah, you could practically hear a pin drop. The cardinal's just stunned. And look, this isn't just drama. It's actually our starting point for a really fascinating deep dive today.
It really is. We're looking at the papacy of Pope Leo XIV, an American-born pope, which is interesting in itself.
Right.
And he basically dared to challenge, well, 1,000 years of Vatican tradition. It's more than just reforms, isn't it? It's about someone trying to redefine the whole purpose, the structure of this incredibly old institution.
Absolutely. So our mission today really is to unpack those specific, pretty radical changes he pushed through.
Yeah, the big one.
And the resistance, because oh boy, was there resistance. And what it all meant, you know, the implications for the Catholic Church. We're pulling this straight from the source material to give you that shortcut to understanding this, this really pivotal moment. So yeah, buckle up. It's quite a story.
It is. Transformation, courage, conflict, it's all in there.
So this man, Leo XIV, before the papacy, he was Cardinal Prevost.
Wow.
And the sources say his move to Pope was, well, fast.
Very swift, yeah.
But he felt chosen for something bigger, more radical than the popes before him. What was it about his background that kind of set him up for this?
That's really key, I think. His preparation. You see, it wasn't in Rome's gilded halls, not at all. No, he spent decades, literally decades, in places like Chicago's rougher parishes and Peru's poorest communities.
Okay, so real groundwork.
Exactly. This wasn't just, ticking boxes. It shaped him. It forged this deep commitment to, as the source puts it, truth, not glory or gold. His whole perspective was just fundamentally different from the Vatican establishment.
And you saw that difference right away, didn't you? That first meeting, the confrontation in the Sala Clementina with the, 12 most powerful cardinals.
The top brass.
And he deliberately broke protocol, made them wait. I mean, it sounds small, but what was the message there right at the start?
Oh, it was a huge message, a clear, deliberate opening shot, really, making them wait like that. He was signaling right from minute one that the power dynamics were shifting. It wasn't about being rude necessarily, but about asserting a new kind of authority, one that didn't, play by the old rules of ceremony and privilege.
And Cardinal Domenity's reaction, the disapproval noted in the source.
Perfectly captures it. The old guard felt it immediately. He was saying without even speaking, things are going to be different.
And different they were. I mean, the first big earthquake getting rid of the pontifical household.
Right, yeah.
This whole institution managing papal ceremonies since, medieval times?
Yeah, centuries old.
This wasn't just saving a few bucks, was it?
Yeah.
What was the strategy behind making this the first big move?
You nailed it. It wasn't just about the money, though that was part of it. He was fundamentally redefining what wealth even means for the church, what dignity means.
How so?
Well, his reasoning was explicit. He said, Christ had no court, no ceremonial master, no gentleman in waiting. Simple as that. He argued the church needed more service, less ceremony, and he even said he'd consulted with the Gospels on it.
Wow.
So right away, he's alienating those who saw all that grandeur, those traditions, as essential to the church's identity, its influence.
And the immediate impact the money saved went straight into a permanent fund for refugee aid. Very direct.
Very direct. Practical application of his philosophy right there.
But you can guess, not everyone was thrilled. Cardinal Hoffmann, the German traditionalist, protested, called it unprecedented. Was there any valid point from their side about losing something important beyond just, we've never done this before?
That's a fair point to raise, and the sources do touch on it. For some, that household wasn't just fluff. It represented, continuity, the sacredness of the office, the church's historical weight.
Okay, a symbol.
A powerful symbol, yeah. They felt it protected the papacy's role. But for Leo, the priority just shifted. It went from protecting the institution to, well, spiritual faithfulness.
And his reply to Hoffman.
Pretty sharp. I consulted with the Gospels. They were quite clear. Basically saying these traditions had become obstacles, not aids.
And the media just exploded, right? Headlines like, Pope abolishes medieval court, Vatican stunned.
Oh yeah, instant frenzy. Leo XIV dismantles 1,000 years of tradition. It was everywhere.
And personally, he doubled down. Refused the fancy papal apartments, took a simple room at Santa Marta.
Lived the message.
Exactly. Lived by that scripture, whoever wants to be first must be last of all and servant of all. And that quote from Sister Maria Constanza, his friend from Peru.
Oh, that's powerful.
The poor are rejoicing, Holy Father. The rich are trembling. Really sums it up.
It really does. Captures the divide perfectly. His own actions just hammered home the point he made by dissolving the household. He wasn't just talking the talk.
Okay, so dismantling the court wasn't enough of a shockwave. Next up, the Vatican Bank.
Right into financial heart.
And the sources say no pope had ever gone to a board meeting in person.
Yeah.
Ever. Broke all protocol. But Leo XIV just walked right in. What message did that send?
Total rejection of that historical wall between, the spiritual side and the money side.
Okay.
His just being there, his physical presence, asserted direct oversight. Accountability over an institution that had always been, let's be honest, pretty secretive.
And he didn't just sit there, did he?
No way.
Yeah.
He immediately laid down this ethical investment framework, said they had to divest right away from arms manufacturing, fossil fuels, and any companies with human rights issues.
That sounds like a direct clash.
Yep.
The bank chairman, Dr. Rossi, worried about losing hundreds of millions.
Yeah.
And the impact on charity funds.
Naturally. That's the pragmatic argument, right?
But Leo's response just cut through it.
Yeah.
He said the church's charity depends on moral authority, not our investment portfolio.
Exactly. It wasn't just about the bottom line. What deeper principle is he getting at there?
Yeah, what's the core idea?
It's about purifying the source of the wealth. He wasn't dismissing charity, but saying how you make the money deeply affects the church's credibility, its soul, really.
And that analogy.
Oh, the money changers.
Yeah.
Powerful. Christ drove the money changers from the temple. He didn't instruct them on maximizing returns.
Oof. That basically strips away the financial arguments, doesn't it?
Completely. Lays bare the spiritual imperative.
Yeah.
He declared the church's integrity was non-negotiable. Full stop. Even if it cost a fortune.
And he wasn't messing around. The spiritual implications are my concern. And they are immediate. Enforced it that same day.
Yep. Not a suggestion box item. An
Okay.
order.
The revolution was definitely underway.
It's full steam ahead.
And revolutions, well, they always face pushback. Cardinal Valente, the Secretary of State, reported immediate fallout. 3 nations pulling ambassadors.
Yeah. Serious diplomatic heat.
7 major donors suspending contributions. And the College of Cardinals, predictably, in an uproar.
You can imagine. Chaos.
How did the wider world take it? Social media must have lit up.
Oh, completely divided. Mirroring the split in the church itself, really. Lots of praise, finally back to the Gospels. Seeing him as this prophetic figure,
Right.
but then huge fear from others. That he was like dismantling the church's power, its influence on the world stage, maybe even threatening its survival as an institution.
And Leo's response to that?
He was ready for it. He argued the church's influence should come from its witness, its moral example, not its wealth or political power. He made this careful distinction, didn't he, between traditions that protect the faith and those that just calcify it, that just become dead weight.
Saying they'd made the mistake of prioritizing the institution over actual spiritual fidelity.
Precisely, a fundamental reordering of priorities.
Then things got even more serious. Whispers of extraordinary measures. Even talk of an anti-pope.
Yeah, that's heavy stuff.
I mean, schism is such a loaded word in church history. How real was that threat? And Leo seemed almost unnervingly calm about it.
The threat was absolutely real. An anti-pope historically means a total break, ripping the church apart.
Right.
But Leo's response, let them try. The Holy Spirit did not bring me here to be silenced by fear. It shows this, absolute conviction, almost fatalistic.
Like his authority came from somewhere else entirely.
Exactly. He seemed convinced his mandate was divine, and no amount of institutional politics or threats would stop him. He wasn't playing politics. He was answering a call.
So beyond tearing down old structures, he was also building new ones, empowering different voices.
Yes, that's a crucial part of the story. That meeting with the heads of religious orders, monks, nuns, priests from various congregations.
What was so different about it?
Everything. No formal audience, no kissing the ring, none of that. Instead, he just sat in a circle with them. 20 men and women.
Just equals.
Temporarily dissolving the hierarchy, yeah. It was symbolic, but powerful. Signaling that wisdom and authority weren't just locked up in the Roman Curia. They were out there in the wider church, especially with those doing the work on the ground.
And this led to his commission on church governance.
Exactly. And look how he structured it. Radically different. Half women.
Wow.
Half from the global South Africa, Asia, Latin America. And crucially, it wasn't just for show. They had real authority to propose binding changes.
Binding changes. So real power shifting away from the curia, the central bureaucracy.
A massive shift. And his justification was historical, wasn't it? He said the early church was led by communities, not courts, by servants, not princes.
He was literally trying to rewind the clock on centuries of centralization.
Absolutely. Reclaiming that earlier, more organic, community-led spirit. That was the goal.
And then came the grand gesture, the one that really shocked the world.
The address from St. Peter's Square.
Yeah. He refused the fancy robes, even though Cardinal Domenici tried to talk him out of it. He wanted the image to match the message.
Definitely. He started, "I come to you not as a monarch or a prince, but as a servant." Very deliberate.
And then he said the church was imprisoned by its own grandeur.
Yeah, more concerned with preserving power than proclaiming Christ, setting the stage.
For the bombshell, selling off 1/3 of the Vatican's art treasures and property.
Unprecedented. Just staggering.
And the money. To set up a global fund for refugees, climate action, poverty relief.
Again, tying the action directly to service.
His justification. The wealth of the church belongs to the poor, and it is time to return what was never truly ours.
So powerful.
And that detail from the source of the technician in the Vatican media control room whispering, "Is he allowed to do this?" That little whisper just cuts right to it, doesn't it? What does that tell you about the power dynamics in an ancient place like that?
It tells you that what's allowed, the rules, the procedures, the traditions, can run headlong into what feels morally right or even spiritually necessary.
Yeah.
For centuries, all that art, that property, it was seen as, patrimony, part of the church's identity, maybe even spiritually uplifting for pilgrims.
Sure.
But Leo just reframed it completely, saw it as wealth hoarded while people suffered. That technician's whisper, it captures the sheer audacity of it, challenging centuries of thinking about property, about purpose within the Vatican walls. It's that classic conflict, precedent versus mandate.
And the emergency meeting of the cardinals that followed must have been intense.
Oh, a battleground, absolutely. And nearly half supported him, especially from Africa, Asia, Latin America. But the Europeans, the Curia cardinals, mostly against...
You had Cardinal Raleigh just furious. But then Cardinal Santos from the Philippines asking that key question.
Perhaps we should ask which traditions truly matter, the gold thrones or feeding the hungry and clothing the naked.
Right, cuts through all the procedural arguments.
It really crystallized the clash, didn't it? Two totally different views of the church's mission.
And Leo's response to all this division.
Definitive. When procedures preserve injustice, they must be changed. When protocols protect privilege rather than people, they must be broken. No ambiguity there.
And clarifying his name choice. I did not take the name Leo to be a lion of power, but a lion of truth.
Setting his standard right there. Truth over power.
Then he invites them all to Assisi to pray at St. Francis's tomb.
A very symbolic move, invoking Francis's own call to rebuild my church. The source says the chapel was packed. His message clearly resonated.
But back in Rome, the knives were out. 10 cardinals signing a document, questioning if his election was even valid.
Getting perilously close to schism, as the source puts it.
How serious was that move? And what does Leo's reaction say about his conviction?
Oh, questioning the election's validity. That's about as serious as it gets. It's basically saying, you're not the legitimate pope. Historically, that's how schisms start, the ultimate rupture.
Yet he stayed calm.
Remarkably so, it seems, rooted in his faith again. Christ warned that he came not to bring peace, but a sword. Truth divides before it unites.
Accepting the division is necessary.
Exactly. He offered dialogue, didn't close the door completely, but he was clear. If dialogue fails, we continue the work anyway. Reform is never without resistance. He knew it would be tough, but he wasn't backing down.
And Cardinal Santos called him a revolutionary.
To which Leo gave that beautiful reply, almost poetic, no, just a gardener pruning what has overgrown so new life can emerge.
A gardener.
Yeah. I think Pope Leo XIV really did kickstart this profound shift, this stubborn insistence on getting back to the roots of the faith.
Right.
He wasn't just, trimming traditions. He was trying to clear space for something he saw as both older and newer.
Interesting way to put it.
And this whole transformation, it wasn't done with armies or grand edicts, really. It was a fundamental shift in perspective, in purpose, driven by this one person's unyielding vision.
Which really brings us to a final thought, something for you, the listener, to maybe chew on. In a world that's constantly wrestling with its own inherited systems, its own traditions, and hearing calls for radical change everywhere, Pope Leo XIV's story kind of forces us to ask, doesn't it? What traditions in our own lives, our own institutions, whatever area, which ones truly protect something vital?
Yeah.
And which ones have just calcified?
Yeah. Which ones need that gardener's discerning hand, as he put it? Pruning away the overgrowth so new life can actually emerge. It's a powerful question.
Definitely something to think about.